being inverted. This is classic. Politicians, knowingly, some of them, most of them unknowingly, that are promoters and pushers of the archontic agenda, they are famous for bloody lying, inversion of truth. This is a quote from the English writer Noel Coward, who said, quite rightly, it is discouraging to think how many people are shocked by honesty and how few by deceit. Such is the level of deceit in our society. One word to describe the archontic influence: deception. So this force I talked about earlier that operates behind the crazes in politics and banking and business and media ownership and all the other stuff is this archontic force, which takes many expressions, as I'll come to. And this is absolutely, massively significant. The Gnostics talk about something called Hal in relation to these archontic manipulators, and Hal means, in our translation, simulation of a virtual reality. A reality that appears real to the decoder, but is not actually real. It's a fake reality. And given what I've been talking about for a few years now, the Gnostic texts describe reptilian entities in relation to being an expression of this archontic force, and 1,600 bloody years ago, they described grey entities, and they describe them as being expressions of the archons, and they say these grey entities are like an unformed baby or a fetus with grey skin and dark, unmoving eyes. They were around thousands of years ago. We think they're a modern phenomenon. No, this manipulation has been going on for a fantastic amount of what we call time. So, what can we ridicule? What's the latest thing to ridicule Ike for? Well, right, let's get a list. They must be adding to it by now. He's been talking for a while at that Wembley place. But one of the things they ridicule me for is the idea that reptilian entities are behind this manipulation of human society. And people can deny their existence if they like. I do not give a shit. They exist. This is a Spanish artist called Robert Illimoz. I spoke in Barcelona, was it 2011, something like that? And he was introduced to me because he'd had an experience which he, thought I might be able to explain. He was into none of this stuff, never heard of me, never heard of the reptilians or anything. But he had a partner who was Brazilian. So he was in Brazil in 2009, I think it was. Yes, 2009. And he's out on his own, painting the landscape in his own unique kind of way. He's got his easel and stuff, and he's on his own, and he's painting away in this landscape. And he said, then this came down in front of him. Bit of a surprise, I suppose. And he said it was completely closed up apart from this window, and there were two entities in the window. And he said this thing came down and just stayed there for ages. He said, I don't know if I was taken aboard. He said, I have no recollection of it. And of course, he's got his bloody easel in front of him. He starts painting it, this chap. And what he saw at the window were these reptilian-type entities just staring at him, looking at him. And these entities exist. I mean, what he has painted is also described, and indeed painted, by other people all over the world who've had the same basic experience of these entities. And I had to bloody smile that this year, the Daily Mail has been taking the piss out of me over this for ages, like all the other buggers. And they run a perfectly straight story, headlined, "Welcome to our new lizard overlord. Studies suggest alien worlds could be full of super-intelligent dinosaurs." But because it's a scientist saying it, it must be bloody true. But Ike, he left school at 15, he can't be right. Oh, bloody hell. Now, what is also interesting about these Gnostic writings is that they clearly were, in many ways, a blueprint for what became a lot of the biblical writings, but they were distorted. A lot of things were removed that were in the Gnostic writings. And one of the things in these texts says, the Lord Archon, demiurge as they call it, come, let us create a man according to our image of God and according to our likeness, that his image may become a light for us. And of course that became a similarly biblical story, but distorted. Even the History Channel has had a series, Ancient Aliens, the series, and one of those programs in that series was about all the ancient descriptions of interbreeding between humans and non-humans to create hybrid bloodlines. And when we talk about interbreeding, because of what we talked about earlier, the nature of reality, it doesn't mean some entity has to have sex with some human, nor does it even mean, it may do, but it doesn't even mean that there has to be some kind of genetic manipulation. There probably was, but it doesn't have to be, because if you can change the information blueprint at this level, then it comes through to the holographic level as a completely genetically different entity. It's just an information change. So all these things are possible. But certainly they all over the ancient world, this is the most famous one, but all over the ancient world, there are descriptions of interbreeding between non-human entities and humans, creating hybrid bloodlines. This is Genesis. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And this is called the genetic disk. It was found in Colombia. It is estimated to be at least 6,000 years old. And on it are depicted human sperm, human female eggs, the birth process, the whole shebang. Fetuses. They knew that far back about all this stuff. Because in ancient society there were high levels of awareness, not least because of these entities, but also in the pre-cataclysmic societies, and that got lost when the cataclysms brought an end to that, and people went back to basically a primitive society would actually build up again. And of course, when you talk about the so-called fall of man, it's all connected to this, the fall into a lower state of consciousness, I would suggest, then reptilian snakes seem to be involved in that. And what is also described is the genetic manipulation of the human form. Again, some people have kind of decoded this or expressed this as these entities created humans. Bollocks. No, what they did was change what already existed. It's absolutely in line with what the Gnostics talk about in terms of this archontic force. They changed what already existed. And they manipulated human genetics so we interacted with reality in a completely different way and became much more suppressed in terms of our ability to perceive reality. We no longer were the connected people of before, and we got put in these bubbles of sense of reality, which has held us in servitude ever since. If you have harmony in the waveform level, then that will play through as harmony in the holographic world of the conscious mind. If you have a massive distortion in that level, it will play through as massive distortions in the holographic world of the conscious mind. A world now of war, people dying of hunger in a world of plenty, about me, conflict on all bloody levels. All this came through from this distortion. They're all expressions of this distortion. And it allowed these entities from just outside of human perception, in frequency terms, to manipulate this reality that we experience as the world. And they are the force, this is absolutely crucial as we go along, these entities, and that which is an expression of these entities, are all worshipped in the end by all the major religions. People might like that who follow one, but all the major religions. I'll come into that as we go along. The secret societies, which are compartmentalized, they, at the highest inner core level, know that what these secret societies are worshipping are these entities, and Satanism, in its own enclosed secrecy, openly worships these entities and sacrifices people to these entities. This is what sacrifice to the gods is all about in the ancient world. This. And behind the institutions of banking and politics, media, religion, and all of it, are these entities through particular bloodlines that I will talk about in a second, which in the end all come back to the same force. Now, you've got to see a lot of these, because if something, a quote from the English writer Noel Coward, who said, quite rightly, it is discouraging to think how many people are shocked by honesty and how few by deceit. Such is the level of deceit in our society. One word to describe the archontic influence: deception. So this force I talked about earlier that operates behind the crazes in politics and banking and business and media are like an unformed baby or a fetus with grey skin and dark, unmoving eyes. They were around thousands of years ago. We think they're a modern phenomenon. No, this manipulation has been going on for a fantastic amount of what we call time. So, what can we ridicule? What's the latest thing to ridicule Ike for? Well, right, let's get a list. It's not actually real. It's a fake reality. And given what I've been talking about for a few years now, the Gnostic texts describe reptilian entities in relation to being an expression of this archontic force, and 1,600 bloody years ago, they described grey entities, and they describe them as being expressions of the archons, and they say these grey entities, ownership and all the other stuff, is this archontic force, which takes many expressions, as I'll come to. And this is absolutely, massively significant. The Gnostics talk about something called Hal in relation to these archontic manipulators, and Hal means, in our translation, simulation of a virtual reality. A reality that appears real to the decoder, but is being inverted. This is classic. Politicians, knowingly, some of them, most of them unknowingly, that are promoters and pushers of the archontic agenda, they are famous for bloody lying, inversion of truth. This is